Welcome to another episode of Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris. Today, we are joined by Joe, who has forged a career in IT sales, as well as parlaying that into the education space. So, Joe's going to have a lot to share for some of those budding careers in information technology, a growing and ever growing field. So, Joe, thanks for taking time to chat today and talk about your career journey and all that you've learned along the way.
Happy to be here. All that I've learned. We only have 45 minutes.
Well, maybe we'll just hit the highlights then.
Okay, fair enough.
Um, you have had to this point in your life a pretty established career, had some time to figure out what you wanted to do, but we all know that is also an ever evolving journey. Joe, for you to start, I'll ask, in your career journey, what have been some of those points in your life that have helped inform your passions and the type of work you wanted to be involved?
Well, those sorts of things can evolve as well. I was 22, one graduating from college, and I made a decision over two opportunities, essentially based on $1,000 more, and the type of work that I was going to end up doing, or the opportunity that it might unfold because of those wasn't a consideration. So, and understand this was when dinosaurs roamed the earth. So, $3,000 it mattered. So I didn't even think. I just said, yeah, I'll take that one. No, it wasn't a bad move and it led to some things. But when I ponder going backwards, what that other opportunity might have presented, it might have been the better opportunity. It might have been. We'll never know. The one I chose was fine and it led me into a place that ultimately, these things take a series of steps and you really can't predict. It never would have occurred to me at 21 years old that in 8 or 9 years I would leave to become an entrepreneur for the next 30. That never occurred to me for a moment. And, looking back on that decision, which was made in 8 seconds, I'm sure that was, in terms of just if my original primary motivation was strictly money, I did fine as an entrepreneur, but I think adding up all the things I could have possibly done had I just stayed in corporate America, probably would have made more money. Would I have affected lives like I did? Because I think in that entrepreneurial career, we helped a lot of our employees. Put 25 or 30 kids through college, or at least help their parents do that. So, there's some value in that, and I feel good about that part. So you kind of have to decide before you answer that initial question is what's your goal here, right?
Right.
Because if you're an education major, you've already decided that big money isn't your thing. Can you make a nice living? Yes. Will you have a nice retirement? Probably. Are you going to have a beach house on the Riviera? Nope. Unless you're in somebody's estate, right? So you kind of have to figure out what your goals are before you answer that question. So if I answered it at all.
No, I think you definitely did. And you talk about how you went into that entrepreneurial space. And I know just from conversations with you that you entered that space, or at least along the way, were in that space with family. So for you, how was navigating that, right? The business interests along with the family interests, and did that create any challenges for you along the way?
Well, first, it's important to note that after nearly 30 years in business with my brother, we can still have Thanksgiving dinner together. So that's an accomplishment. I
Yes.
guarantee you, there's a lot of people that can't make that statement. And there were bumps along the road. You spend more time with your work family than you do with your family. There's going to be run-ins, and actually, my brother and I at one point went to what was called a small business counseling. It's essentially marriage counseling for people that are in family businesses. It was fascinating. Because you end up figuring out why you're still angry about something that happened at 12. Still really angry about that, man. So all those types of opening up communication and keeping those lines, because we worked hard at not mixing business and family, and it has to be a concerted effort, because if you're dragging that stuff around all day, and I'm proud of the fact that we still have a positive relationship between my brother and I all those years later.
Yeah. And that is very positive, and many people cannot say that.
Yeah, it does interject some dynamics into a non-family, for people that aren't familiar with the difference between family and non-family businesses. That it's more complicated, but well, that's what I chose,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And as you entered that space, or as you kind of created that space for yourself and your brother and any others that were involved. What were some of those key takeaways early on of figuring out, hey, having my own business, partnering with somebody, employing other people, these are the issues or challenges or just the day-to-day tasks that you just did not expect and you had to learn along the way?
Well, first, I think it's important because I sort of tease myself about making that decision in 7 seconds. That's not actually true. I was working in the nuclear construction industry. Probably not a terrible thing that I got out of that because, we didn't have a license granted to a nuclear plant between, I believe, 1980 and 2007 because of the accident that happened at 3 Mile Island. And it just, they finally granted a license in North Carolina, which, they started construction and the tsunami hit Japan and knocked out their nuclear and it frightened people again. So, but the precursor to why I made that decision fairly quickly was because I'm in this machine, right? I'm a cog in this machine. And I was what then was called planning and scheduling engineers. And I was managing an office of people who did that. That is what has evolved into what is called now project management, right? When you do that function, the people that work above you define whether or not you matter. So in some jobs that I worked on, I was an integral part of developing the budgets and the schedules and how they would work and making people publishing to people what were the critical elements that would make this come in on time. What could you slide on? What could you not? And in some other places, it was just window dressing. I mean, when your boss tells you what the end date of the project is, you're not useful.
Yeah.
My boss should be asking me, what are the components? How I put this together? Tell me what you think. And then he or she certainly would get the opportunity to say, okay, how can we shorten this? Because there are ways we could, and then we could have a conversation with the people that could make it shorter. But to get told the end date under no uncertain terms. And that's where I was. I was at a particular power plant where all that mattered was what went in the paper, and had arguments with the guys running the. I'm not sure they appreciated that because I was in my late 20s and I was passionate about what I was trying to accomplish. And essentially, what I found out was if I didn't show up, nothing changed. And for me, that was untenable. Right, I couldn't live in a world where I was just getting a check. Believe me, I had people around me that were happy to do that. Just send a check, I'll be fine. I don't care whether you use my work or not. That didn't work for me. So when the opportunity came to do something different it involved risk. I had a mortgage to pay, and one of the worst business plans ever put on this earth. My brother and I came up with it. Terrible. But when that doesn't work, that's how you learn. I know if anybody out there considers me intelligent, smart, or whatever term you want to use, I'll be the first to tell you I learned almost nothing from success. My school of hard knocks has always been, okay, don't do that again and see why that didn't work and make sure that it doesn't happen again and those kinds of things. And when you're employing people, for instance, you never, in my mind, don't want to torture somebody for making a mistake. As long as they learn from it and they get better, it's okay. Keep repeating that mistake. That's a different conversation. But
Right. Right. The
everybody
definition
learns
of
in different
insanity,
ways.
right?
And my way was to, not run my head into that particular brick wall again.
Yeah. No, no, I think that's very, very telling, right? The learning from those mistakes, and especially if you're forging a new path for yourself in your career, it's important to identify the mistake, figure out how to fix it, and then not repeat it. Right. That's all you can do. You can move on from it.
One of the things my brother and I did, because it was my decision how we would split the percentage of ownership in the company. And it was my decision that he would have 51% and I would have 49 because in my mind, somebody had to have the hammer. You couldn't be stuck. But I had, after 2 years, the option at any time to buy that 50th percent. So we gave each other room to operate. So he operated as the president. I operated as, I don't know, the rest of the company for a while. And it's kind of where I developed my implementation theories, and I was responsible for for the business, paying the taxes, paying the people, and for the technologies, both choosing what we sold and having it implemented. And obviously, that was a very small staff when we started. Because here's a lesson for all those listening. That old adage that it takes money to make money, there's some accuracy to that because when you start a business with a personal computer and $5,000, it's hard. You're living out of the cash register for a lot of years and trying to play catch up, and investing in new technologies and getting people trained appropriately becomes an issue. But I mean, we've lasted for 30 years, so I'm not going to apologize for it. It was just harder that way. It's much better if you have a rich parent. Do that.
That is ideal.
I didn't have one of those, so I couldn't do that.
No, but that's great. No, just to demonstrate and just to share, right? There were those growing pains, and there was, you had a mortgage to pay, like you said,
Right.
and you were living off of what was there and not looking. I mean, you're looking ahead to prepare for what was next, but you sometimes couldn't look too far in front of your nose to live day to day.
And one of the dangers in the entrepreneurial world is spending so much time working in the business that you're never working on the business, because the business needs attention to just, where are we going? How are we going to get there? Is there a better bank deal? Is it, there's a lot of things that go into having the business not stagnate, because there's sort of four stages of understanding, if you will, starting with, and I don't know if you've ever heard this presented, but unconscious incompetence, right? You don't know that you don't know. And the second stage would be conscious incompetence, where you're starting to realize, oh, wait, I don't know. And then you get to sort of conscious competence, where you know. And then you get to unconscious incompetence, where you just don't have to think about it. You're just doing the thing. In some of my careers, I got to that spot. In some of my functions as an entrepreneur, I got to that spot. In some, I had to work at it. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, anybody who's worked around me knows I understand accounting, I understand finance, I hate them both. So I had to always force myself into that area. It wasn't natural for me. I couldn't care less if columns add up, but for some reason banks do.
Yeah. They live in the
They
spreadsheets.
really
Well,
do like their columns to add up, and
is
I
what it
think
is.
there's always interpretations and nuance whether your columns add up or not.
Yeah. No, that's good. So you shared a little bit about some of those skills and that some of those areas you learned, whether you learned to love it, learned to hate it, or just learned it because you needed it. For you, what was one or maybe potentially multiple skills that you acquired, or at least recognized their importance, that helped accelerate your career or at least your success in your career? And for those that you recognized and developed, what did you do to actively develop those skills?
So for me, I sometimes question my value when everything's going well, because for me, the interesting part and the part where I thought I brought most value in all my careers was diagnosing issues, fixing problems, creating solutions. And a lot of times, there have been multiple instances in my career where you reset a conversation and you say, let's start thinking about this differently, right? And for my methodology for problem solving, whether it was in IT, whether it was a management or a finance problem, it doesn't matter, is reducing it to the simplest symptom. So some people see the symptom as the problem. The symptom's not the problem, right? So let's take a look at the symptoms and diagnose those and see what is the most basic elemental way to cure that symptom, and then see how that fits into the broader problem, right? And if you do that at a simple level, to me, it always brought, even if the solution was complex, it brought clarity to what the problem really was, and it allowed you to then fix it. And that is something I developed as an early diagnostician in the IT industry, but it worked in every phase of my life, whether it was physical plant management, whether it was IT management, it didn't matter. That problem solving skill and reducing things to their simplest, most elemental building block, that's always worked for me. Even in my family life, that's just my methodology. So, and there were moments in my career where really, really complex issues and people start to then get clouded by the complexity. They can't think
Right.
through to the problem because the complexity is in the way. So you wipe away the complexity and say, let's look at the four things that make this up, or the three things, and narrow it down to where's the problem really exist. And in many cases, it's a simple solution. The other thing I would suggest is, you hear a lot in our workforce over the last 20 years where people at the working level will say things like, they don't listen to us. They're not listening to us. There's a reason they say that, because people aren't listening to them. So if you want the best information you can get on any particular job, it's the people that are doing it that
Hmm.
know what's working and what's not working. But we went through this sort of evolution in this country where we took artisans and made them into robots and automatons. And then after that, we brought in efficiency experts, because, sooner or later, we're going to tell the carpenter that there's only one arm angle that could possibly push a nail into a piece of wood. And we removed their creativity. We have created barriers between imagination and innovation at the work site by the people doing the work. We've removed the ability for them to communicate that and make everything better or more efficient or whatever it might be. So sometimes they're just right. I'm not saying they always are, but we should listen to the people at the working level. They know. And there are some gems at that level that are really, really smart people that didn't want higher education. They didn't need higher education. That doesn't mean they're not really smart and logical, and that they have something really valuable to offer. But sometimes we look at the organizational chart and decide who's worth listening to, and that's a mistake.
Yeah.
That is
No, definitely.
absolute
There's
mistake.
all right. And especially if you're looking for potentially the simplest explanation, the
There
people
you go.
not based on their level in the organizational chart, but the people that are closest to the job being done are going to be able to offer you the simplest explanation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So no, that's really good. Now I'm going to ask you something. This is going to be going back in your mind potentially. You know, you talked about
I'm not
you
real
were
bright and I'm kind of old, so I only go back so far.
well, let's think through college, right? You said this is when dinosaurs roamed the earth, so we're digging back
Yep.
here. What do you, we'll say, we'll bring it more to present day, recall now still from your college education that has stuck with you, whether that was any courses or whether those were conversations or whether those were just, late nights with friends that helped develop you as a professional that still ring true now?
So since my college education is never going to get me a job again, I can admit this. First of all, I went to college to get grades. Huge mistake. Go to college to get smart and the grades will take care of themselves. But I was there to get grades. And I didn't do it very well on the early side, right? I mean, a sub 2 ERA, QPA in my first year. Sub 2. Apparently I had a pretty good time, but, didn't really understand that a good portion of life is showing up. I didn't go to a lot of classes in my first year. It's that moment where you're realizing freedom for the first time in your life. You're realizing that you're unfettered and you can do whatever you want. That doesn't mean you should do whatever you want. That was what I learned. Okay, you still have to. And one of the things that and I've spoken in your class before. I really like the college age kid. I don't mean to offend anybody by calling him a kid. I like that age because you're becoming responsible, which is something high school kids can't understand. You know that you have to eat every day and that you have to have clean clothes tomorrow, and you got to do your work. And yeah, you should probably slide some fun into your day, but it shouldn't overwhelm the work that you have to do. So that in my mind, the turning point that made me get value out of college was understanding that I have responsibilities every day to my education, to the clubs that I was in. I have to manage this and not only get those grades, but get smarter because there's just value in it. And I believe over time I've probably leveraged more out of my college career than I gave it credit for when I left. There are things to this day that stick with me. Part of my theories around how I manage people and how I make sure that all sort of opinions are heard and that people feel valued came right out of a collective bargaining class that I had when I was a senior. I mean, it's kind of fascinating, but it's hard to put those in the excitement of your first job and starting your life and whatever steps that may be. You don't always reflect like that when you get my hairline or this width of a part, if you will, when you start to reflect on that stuff. But yeah, I got more value out of my education than I realized, and it was a state school as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's funny because one of my most memorable courses was an elective class that I did not have to take, but had friends that were in the program in which it was being offered, and they were trying to fill the class. And they said, "Hey, you should come take this hostage negotiation course." And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not? I'll fill up my last semester of my senior year with 24 credits instead of 21 to get this taken care of." And I had no need for it, but it was from a gentleman who was one of the lead hostage negotiators in South Korea at the time, found his way into Wheeling, West Virginia to be a faculty member for a period of time. And that was one of the classes he taught, and one of the most memorable just for the stories that he was able to
Fascinating.
talk to us about and talk about the real application of the things that we were discussing in the class.
And honestly, as a college student, it took me way too long to realize how important it is to find the right fact. The collective bargaining class. Here's a name you might be too young to remember, but there was a mayor from Cleveland. They called him the boy mayor. His name was Dennis Kucinich, and he got elected as mayor of Cleveland in his 20s, and it was a disaster. but it was one of his upper echelon advisors that taught that collective bargaining class. And the same thing, some of the stories were spellbinding. They would talk of things actually played out. And, we read accounts of things in the paper. We don't really know what happened. We just saw what one reporter was told, whether that was anywhere near what happened. Because I've been in some things. I was the school board president in my community in a very high performing school district, and one that has a very high level of public interest and need for transparency. And, that it is what defines my community is the school district. And I'm sitting in the middle of the table and every meeting's on TV and people want to know. And some things they can't know. I'm sorry. That's the, and you're going to hear the conspiracy theory stuff. But when you are part of one of those things, it's a media event and you see what people think they hear, it's astounding. Because Occam's razor, which, right, the most simple explanation is probably the explanation. Never consider that. They weave this tale that is so complex that, you just have to wonder sometimes how people come to those conclusions. But at the end of the day, there's usually a story there somewhere.
Right. It's an informed opinion that's started maybe from a good place and then has gone astray.
I guess my point is there are stories, regardless of what you're reading, there's a story there somewhere and we're never going to know it and it's okay. But you're going to live through some of those things too, no matter what it is. So, you're the HR manager and you're just going to stand there and tell everybody, for instance, and this relates to no organization I've ever run. It's just an example. Everything's fine. We're doing this. How the other people that made that decision got there and collaborated to get there may be completely different than the reality, but sometimes you're kind of hamstrung on what you can talk about.
Yep. No, definitely. So this will, I think, resonate with you in much of your career, but we all know that the continued evolution and uses of artificial intelligence is transforming work and the workforce at the same time. So for you, how do you envision AI transforming the workforce in those industries in which you have experience, and we'll just say in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay. I'm going to tell you the 17 reasons why I hate this question.
Okay.
I have no idea what AI is going to do in 10 years because it changes every 8 minutes. I mean, so to project what it's going to be in 5 years even is folly. I see tremendous efficiency advances coming in all industries. Take your pick. From AI. Gee, maybe we won't have to buy systems that spit stuff out to spreadsheets so we can analyze it that way because those sorts of efficiencies. And there's a lot. I also see a tremendous expense in either keeping the workforce fed or retraining them because there's just too many jobs that aren't going to be useful anymore. Some of them skilled, some of them not so skilled. I think we're going to see I think the cultural effect is we're going to see an emphasis on the trades, the building trades. I suspect higher education people don't want to necessarily hear that, but I don't think it's such a terrible thing for our society. I don't think we have enough plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and millwrights, and all those other things. I think that will be really, really beneficial for our culture and to keep people productive and working and feeling valuable. But what this technology will, and I hedge on this because there's another technology, quantum computing, that if we ever figure out the end result of that and make that commonly available, at that point, don't ask me. The sky's the limit. The amount of computations that quantum computer, it dwarfs anything we can do. I mean, there are places that are close if they can figure out how to cool it. That's the hard part, right? There was a president of the his name escapes me, but it was like in the 1870s and made the comment that I'm pretty sure that everything that can be invented has been invented by now. I don't know. Maybe the ability to compute at that level gives us answers to how we travel across the stars. I don't know. It's just too big a question. I'm just a poor public school kid that in the twilight of a mediocre career. And you ask me a question like that. I don't know how anybody could rationally explain. I mean, we in the workforce, we look at how can it improve our day? How can it improve the lives of our students or the chances that the student is going to progress further? That's how we're sort of at this point built to think, right? I mean, how does it benefit our students? It's a small section of what's going on, first of all. And second of all, AI is popping up in the places that you really didn't expect it to, and sometimes those are the ones that have value that we didn't anticipate.
Right. I understand it's a question that we can speculate and conjecture on, but
I would have been
in
easy.
2 years from now, we'll know that we were totally wrong.
I'd have had more hard data that there is a God. Believe me, for the last, I've been a technologist since they invented this stuff, since technology was a word. I've been in this business, and it's a far-reaching possibility. And 5 years is, first of all, stop asking 5 years. That's way too far out there, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't have solid answers for you. That's a
No, you have thoughts though,
It's an
right?
interesting question, but it's a daunting question in some I don't wanna say a ridiculous question, but it has ridiculous elements to it, right? I mean,
Right, right, right. No, that's good. So I'm gonna flip to a question that I'm unsure what direction this is gonna go, but I'm interested to hear what the worst advice you ever received in regards to your career or the evolution of your career or whatever that may have been.
well, first of all, I don't believe in advice. I believe in gathering information from people. I believe in listening to what they have to say, considering it. But the word, did I take advice? That gives me an out. That gives me someone else to blame. And I've never been
Right.
interested in that. I make mistakes, I own them. If I get some information from you in the form of advice and I take it, that's a choice. I made
Yeah.
that decision. So it's now my decision. I own it. And if it goes bad, I don't really, well, I'm not interested in going back and say, well, Chris told me. I mean,
Yeah.
if they wait, then why didn't they give Chris the job if that was the case, right? So
Right.
I don't believe in advice. I do believe in asking smart people to weigh in and give me their positions and weighing those things. But ultimately, I've always been accountable mostly to me. I've always told people that the most important piece of technology I've ever had is a mirror. And if I can look at it and know I did my best, then I'm going to live with that. But the concept of, and I know that if I, there's no way to poll this because people will always tell you what you want to hear. But if I was able to get inside people's heads and figure out how many are actually accountable to themselves, I've always believed it's not your boss's job, for instance, to manage you. It's your job to manage your boss. And by that, I do not mean tell him what he wants to hear, tell her that she's the greatest or whatever, because I do believe you have to argue with your boss sometimes. I do believe that you have to push back. Cardinal rule for me, and the best piece of advice I ever got, tell me I'm wrong, but don't tell me I'm wrong if you don't have a solution. And I know what the
Hmm.
problems are. If you're bringing me
Yeah.
something that's a problem, do not bring it without a solution, and we can talk about it. And that has been incredibly valuable to me because they don't. Organizations don't need paid hecklers, and that's essentially what that is. So yeah, I don't know, man. I went down a path there, I know, but philosophically, I think people have a lot to offer you, but they aren't offering you their responsibility for what you do.
Yeah.
So you do what you do, and
That's
when you
fair.
make a mistake, own it and keep your integrity intact.
There you go. All right, Joe. Well, thanks for taking time. I'm going to offer you to provide any final words of wisdom that you may wish to share with to-be graduates, those entering or re-entering the workforce, or anyone's just searching for something to better position themselves in their careers.
I think it's incredibly important to be honest, be willing to speak truth to power, but know you're right. Do your homework, do your research, know your facts, quantify and qualify your opinions, stick to your guns. And when your boss says, no, we're going in a different direction, get in the boat and row. He's the boss he or she's the boss for a reason. So until you're that person, stick to your guns until when the fight's over, then do what the leadership says is in the best interest of the organization. I mean, that's continuing to backbite leadership, or that's not positive. It's not productive. It doesn't help anybody. But if you continue to push back with intelligence and with factual basis, somebody's going to recognize that and you're going to be valuable. And even if you don't get the next promotion, be valuable. Find a way to be valuable, because if you're just someone that's doing these, kind of every job has some sort of functionary, routine, boring stuff you have to do it and do it well. But that's not the valuable part. The valuable part's in the innovation and the creation and the imagination and how you put that together and apply it to whatever business you're in and make the business better. And when they take
There it
credit
is.
for it, don't complain about it. Though you'll get paid some way or another. They're going to sometimes take the credit for it.
somebody somewhere will recognize the brilliance
You know
and they'll
what? The
figure out
best
a way
boss
to
that
harness
I've
that.
always had, and I've tried to do this with the people that I've led, is to make sure that when they do something, it's not me that's taking that. I want them. The old saying is you want to praise them in public and beat them in beat them in private. Right? Just be a good person, keep your integrity intact. Hard work's always a good thing too. That's all I got.
There we go. That's it. Well, a parting phrase there. I think somebody that's currently making the row the boat reference popular is Minnesota's head football coach, PJ Fleck. So follow Joe, follow PJ Fleck, and row that boat. And you can row that boat to the next episode that will be coming out soon. Classroom to Corner Office, Career Talks with Chris.